Hello, everyone. I am Lacey. This is Lieutenant Dan, and you are watching Reptiles. We are outside again. Missouri weather is crazy. It'll be 20 degrees in the morning, 80 degrees in the afternoon, and it is a lovely day in the middle of November. Weather be crazy, y'all, so I thought I'd let Lieutenant Dan come out and enjoy some weather, or at least some natural air. So today's video, someone asked me a question at work yesterday, and I decided, you know what, that's what we are going to talk about today. So, my coworker, Shannon, she asked, how can you tell if a snake is a boy snake or a girl snake? It's a reasonable enough question. Obviously, I mean, Lieutenant Dan, he's my boy. But how can you tell? Well, with ball pythons and boas, you cannot tell just by looking at them. They don't have any sexually dimorphic traits. I mean, the closest you get is that females get bigger when they're full grown, but when they're babies, like, you can't tell, which is wild. Some species of snakes you can tell. Sometimes the colors are more vibrant or less so, and in some, like North American snakes or just colubrids in general, you can tell by looking at their tail. For example, bull snakes, hognose snakes, the male will have a longer, more thick tail, uniformly thick all the way down the tail, to make room for the snake's hemipenes, which are the male reproductive organ in reptiles. And in females, they will have a shorter, more tapered tail because they only have scent glands. They don't need to worry about stuffing hemipenes in their tail. They don't have to worry about that. But back to ball pythons, boas, you can't tell by looking at their tail. If I can get, he's kind of wrapping up. This is Lieutenant Dan's. Oh, hi, handsome. This is Lieutenant Dan's tail. And if we look, here's his cloaca and here's his tail. And, you know, I mean, it tapers, but you can't really tell with ball pythons and boas. With ball pythons, boas, what you can do when they're babies is something called popping, which do not do unless you have practiced a lot with a vet, or if you are a vet. Don't do it if you've never done it before. I'm not familiar. I've seen people pop hemipenes and scent glands, but I'm not going to do that. Also because he's an adult. But what you can kind of do is you kind of pull back on their anal plate or their cloaca, and then you kind of roll pressure up from the base of the tail towards the cloaca. And in theory, the hemipenes, if they are there, will pop out like that. And if there are scent glands, the two itty bitty little scent gland nubbins will kind of pop, but you won't really be able, it'll be very noticeable. Something else you can do, so let's say I got Lieutenant Dan as an adult, and if I didn't know if he was a boy or not, you could do something called probing. Now, the hemipenes on a male in the snake's tail, they are kind of inverted, right? So when they come out, they're everting. Think of it like two little pouches almost that are kind of living in their tail at the base of their cloaca. So what you can do with a probe, since it's like these pockets, you can take the probe and very carefully slide it in the cloaca and then find the pocket and go down. And if the probe goes down like five or more scales and goes down pretty deep, that's a good indicator that you have a male ball python because you're probing deeper into the hemipenes. If the probe only goes down maybe 2 or 3 scales, then you got a female and those are scent glands. If you're somewhere in the middle, like 4 scales, and you're kind of like on the fence, it is always a good option to consider genetic testing. The shed testing, like with, you could do like Rare Genetics, RBI. They do snake shed testing, and they'll tell you the genetics of your snake, and they'll tell you the gender and all that. If you don't have experience in sexing your snake, that is what I would recommend. The breeder you got the animal from should have been able to pop or probe to tell you what gender the snake is. I got my snake, I'm Lieutenant Dan here, I got him from Bob Clark, legendary breeder, and I trust his estimation that Lieutenant Dan is a male. And considering he's only about 4 feet long, so smaller than a full-size female would be, I'm not surprised. He's my boy. I love him. Look at this guy. Look at this handsome man. But yeah, you can't really tell just by looking at them. If I were to put him next to a female, you could probably tell which one is the male and the female, because the female will be just thicker and bigger. And females are typically bigger because they have to carry so many eggs. And it's advantageous to have a bigger body, a body that's better at storing fat, so you can survive the incubation process, the egg laying process. It's a lot better to have a bigger snake. Bigger snake, more eggs, more likely to survive maternal incubation. And boy snakes, they don't need to be so big because their job is to impregnate the female so she can have lots of eggs and babies. So that's kind of how you sex snakes. Hi. Unless you're breeding the snake, it doesn't really matter if they're male or female, unless you plan to do free roaming. If you do plan to do free roaming, which is in a very safe, monitored environment, letting your snakes kind of cruise around and mind their business and explore outside of their enclosure. So knowing the gender of your snakes is important for that, because you don't want adult males roaming with adult females, just in case there is breeding behavior. And if you aren't planning on having baby snakes and breeding, you don't want breeding behavior between your snakes. Hi. You also don't want two adult males free roaming together, because they can go into male combat, which will stress them out. It's not a good time. They won't be happy, and you don't want that for your little friend. But if you only have one snake, like Lieutenant Dan, he's my only ball python. If you only have one snake, you don't need to worry about it too much. Yeah, it's not a huge important thing, but I just like to know because he's my boy. Sekhmet, she's a girl. So with sand boas, you can almost kind of tell. There is a slight difference in that tail, kind of like colubrids, where females' tails will be shorter and taper versus a male's tail, which will be longer and thicker all the way down. So sand boas are kind of the exception to that rule that you can kind of tell, but still the best option is to probe them or pop them or do the shed testing. Now, next week is the St. Louis NARBC. I'm very excited. If you're going to the St. Louis NARBC, let me know. Let's get some cold-blooded caffeine. Let's hang out. Let's look at all the cool animals. Hi, sweet boy. Let's look at all the cool animals that are going to be there and have a good time. It's a fun time will be had by all. And at this show, we are picking up a new friend from Snake Discovery. I'm so excited. And if you have any guesses of what we're getting, put them in the comments below. If you already know, don't ruin it. Let the people guess and have fun. I'm very excited. I'll tell you, it is a girl snake. She is a lady snake, and I'm very excited. It is not a species that I have. That's all you're getting until I show her off to you. But until next time, friends, never stop learning, because a mind is a terrible thing to waste. See ya!